My name is Josh Smith,
I'm Jackie Smith.
and this is our God story about our daughter, Lynlee Faith. Her life started out, it wasn't supposed to happen. And so, this is a story of the miracles that God performed in her life through the time that we found out, about 3 months into your pregnancy, that it was going to be lethal.
Yeah.
And now she's obviously affected many lives. God used her in ways that we're still finding out today, 13 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just going to tell the story of how she came to be.
Yeah. So when I was about 14 weeks pregnant with Lynlee, we had started to have some a little bit of troubles, and then the doctor assured us that it's kind of a not normal thing in pregnancy. So things got better, and then around 18 weeks, I went to Atlanta to visit my best friend, because just a miracle within Lynlee's miracle that I feel like needs to be shared is that my best friend's mom, they were in Atlanta, and she happened to have a brain aneurysm, or 3 brain aneurysms. And I was going to visit my best friend, and
Because her mom was on her deathbed.
She was, yes, dying. So she was in the intensive care unit in Atlanta, and we had gone. Her dad wanted her to get one night away from the hospital, so he had gotten us a hotel room. And as we were walking into the hotel super late at night, what I thought was happening was a miscarriage. And so we went to the hotel room, and I started bleeding. And so I went to the bathroom, and I was having what would appear to be a miscarriage, a lot of clots and just so much bleeding. I was scared to look in the toilet and to know what to do next. And so my best friend did that. And we weren't really sure, but there wasn't a fetus there. And so we went to, I called you, and then I think you said call the OB office, and they said to go to the hospital and get yourself checked. And so my best friend said, there's one place I know how to get to in Atlanta, and it's the hospital. So we got to the hospital, and they just said, it's not good. You need to go home and see your doctor. And so my mom had gotten me there. We rode together. And so we went home, and we went to the doctor the next day. And that is when the ultrasound tech got pretty flustered and said, I need to go get the doctor. And I think at the time, we were 25 years old. Lynlee's our first baby, and I was so naive to just even everything we had experienced up to that point. And Josh is in the medical field, so he knew a little bit more. So
you came home, Jackie came home, 14 weeks pregnant. We thought it was probably the baby wasn't going to be alive anymore, and our baby was still alive. Yeah. So Jackie, you just we just continued on. They were like, we'll just see what happens.
Right.
And then everything seemed like it had gotten
better. It wasn't
better.
bad news yet.
Right. You weren't bleeding anymore.
Yes.
Everything seemed to be getting more normal.
That's right.
So then we went to your 18-week anatomy scan.
Yes.
And that's where the real bad news hit. And so I don't know if you want to go ahead and share that.
Yeah.
We were together for that part of it.
We were together. The ultrasound tech was doing the ultrasound, and this is the appointment where a lot of times you get to find out the sex of the baby.
We were super excited.
Yes, our family was excited. First grandbaby on both sides. And so she was doing the ultrasound, and pretty quickly she said, I need to go get the doctor. And so the doctor came in a little flustered and said, okay, there's no amniotic fluid. And I think I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And so amniotic fluid, a baby has to have that, and they swallow it in, and that's how their lungs develop, and they pee it out, and then they continue to do that. So they said, there's no amniotic fluid. We're going to send you to a high-risk doctor tomorrow. So we went home.
Yeah, okay.
And we slept. I mean, I was naive. I thought, okay, a high-risk doctor, cool, we'll go see another doctor. And then the next morning we went to see a high-risk doctor, and we had about 2 hours worth of ultrasounds, and that was the day that we got to find out it was a girl, and which was very exciting. And then they took us into a room, and the doctor came in and he said, so your pregnancy is 100% lethal. There is 0% chance of survival. And it's just like the odds, like it's like you've been struck by lightning. That's what he started to tell us. He said there's, on the ultrasound, she's not growing correctly. There's muscle deformities, just like stuff you don't want to hear.
Exactly.
And he said that we basically had 2 options, that if we wanted to continue to carry, we were most likely going to miscarry, but there's 0% chance of survival if she was born. And then he, I don't know if I would say encourage us, but he thought the right decision was to, he couldn't even say it really. He gave us a pamphlet, and he never said the name, but it was called Arkansas Abortion Clinic. And he said, I know it has a funny name. And so, I mean, after that, it was a little bit of a blur. I think they tried to encourage us to go out the back door. I don't remember if we did.
Yeah, it was kind of a blur. I just remember you're kind of in shock. Like, we were devastated, right? And so the only thing we knew to do was pray. So we drove to the parking lot of High Point Church, and we just prayed and asked for wisdom, and went home, and we curled up under a blanket on the couch, and we both cried, and then we decided we have to make a decision on what to do.
I think for me at that point, it was the first time that I'd ever been faced with a trial of, like, I didn't know how to pray. Like, should I be asking God for a miscarriage, or should I
pray for healing, or what?
Yeah, we just didn't know
we
at
didn't
the
know.
time.
Yeah, it was very, a lot. It was a lot. I think
we kept to ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't share.
I don't know
with
if
our
we felt
family yet.
embarrassed or shame or what, but we didn't want to, I think maybe just wanted to know, we're kind of private people anyway, but we
wanted to, like, protect them in a way too.
Yeah, because our parents were just as excited as we were, and we'd found out it was a granddaughter, and, you know, it had been all boys on both sides of the family. She has 2 brothers, I have 3 brothers, so I knew that our parents were going to be super excited as we were, but
I'll say, like, the conversations that we had, like, we discussed how, like, we don't believe in abortion. So to be given a pamphlet that says Arkansas Abortion Clinic, like, that's, it was a no, but we still just didn't.
Yeah, also,
it just felt like such a big weight of our decision that felt like at the time it was our decision, but ultimately it was God's decision. And so I think that's when we called Chris.
Yeah, and we're looking for some counsel. Chris Conley was the pastor, and he called us back, and he said very specific things that we remember to this day. And Jackie has them written down in her journal, but I don't know if you had it written down, but it was like, don't make a decision that you're going to question later, like that you think you might regret.
So the guidance that we were told, that Chris shared, is he said, what decision will you never second guess? What decision will lead y'all without any regrets? If you carry to term, this is still your child, 19 weeks or not. What helps us forgive? And then you said, we don't understand God's purpose. He'll bring us through this. So, like, even if we weren't clear what God's purpose was, you know, you were confident in saying that he would bring us through this, whatever decision we made that we felt like was our decision at the time. So
at that moment, we both knew what our
Right.
decision was. I mean, it wasn't our decision, it was God's decision.
Right.
And that was the decision we would never regret.
yeah,
So-
and so very confidently and pretty much immediately, we decided that her middle name was going to be Faith, because we were going to have faith to continue the journey. So the high-risk doctor was, pretty much out of the picture, because to him, 100% lethal, 0% chance, what's the point? So our regular OB doctor was not encouraging, but she didn't discourage us whatsoever.
She was consoling. She said, "I'm so sorry.
Yes.
And you'll have a
healthy
pregnancy one day."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just kind of one God incident that he threw in the mix for us was that since I went so regularly, I saw the same ultrasound tech, and she happened to be a fellow member of High Point. And she was probably the first person that was like championed for me. She was like, "Where's your water? Like, drink your water." Because
she's the first person that gave you some hope.
That made me feel like it was a normal pregnancy, even, because without fluid, it was my first pregnancy anyway, so I wasn't really showing at that point anyway, but without fluid, you don't really show. And so anyway, so that was just, it was really sweet that he put her in our lives. And
as an encourager.
Yes. Yeah. So normal fluid is 8 to 12 centimeters. And
so let's start back after phone call with Chris. Chris had told us he wanted us to come up front the next Sunday and be prayed over, and so absolutely we agreed. So we told our family the news, and they were just as devastated as we were, and so they all decided we're all going to go together and go to the front of the church on Sunday, and we're going to pray for a miracle and pray for healing. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. One of the main verses that stood out to me, I'll read it to you, was Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And the other one that always stood out was Hebrews 13:5. He says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." And there's not a lot of people you can turn to in that moment that understand you. And it's like, why are we chosen to go through this? I don't know, but in a way it was an honor. Like, I felt like it was an honor, and we were blessed to be able that God chose us to go through this trial. And like, he must have a lot of faith in us, and so you never know what people are going through. And there's always, one thing we've learned through this is there's always somebody who's got something worse than you.
21 weeks, like every week we would go in, well, this is significant to say, every week we would go in and we would pray for there to be more fluid, or pray for there to be fluid.
Specific prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, because the last ultrasound there was no fluid, but she still had a heartbeat. So there was no her moving around.
We were just kind of waiting to see if she was going to miscarry.
That was
what everyone expected.
And so we went in for an ultrasound, I guess 20-ish weeks. There was a pocket of 1.2 centimeters of fluid.
Yep.
And
measured it.
It
was like the start of God's miracle. Like that. We prayed for a miracle.
Could see too.
And for some unexplained reason, she's got a little pocket of fluid.
Yeah. So from weeks 20 to
25 or so, 24.
Yeah, she kept that 1.2 to 1.4 pocket of fluid, and her lungs did what they could for those months, and her arms got to move and legs got to move for not months, for that amount of time.
Yeah.
At 22 weeks, I was put on bed rest because viability of a pregnancy is 24 weeks, and our regular OB said, "I don't want to get y'all excited, but a baby's viable at 24 weeks. Like, there's, breathing machines, they could be intubated." And so at 21 weeks, I was put on bed rest at home, and they would test me weekly to see if I was leaking fluid, but to see if it was amniotic fluid, and it never tested positive until the day that it did. And she said, "Y'all are gonna go to the hospital, and you're gonna stay there until you deliver, and we're gonna hope that we make it to 34 weeks. Well, I was started to have contractions, and they said that infection was setting in on me and for the baby, and that we were gonna have to deliver. And Lynlee was born at 8:53, and she weighed 1 pound 4 ounces. So
25 weeks and 3 days, right? 4
I think
days?
4 days. 25 weeks and 4 days. So, and I remember the NICU doctor saying, so the first obstacle that we have to come over is she's not measuring 500 grams. And to have the tube fit down for the machine to be able to breathe for them, they have to be at least 500 grams. And so we prayed, like, specifically.
That was the first obstacle.
Yeah.
To be big enough to even have a chance to be intubated.
And I have it written down, which obviously we didn't know Lynlee was coming yet, but I remember it must have been, so I have written down January 1st, 2011. The Lord answered all my prayers yesterday. So I don't remember if when they measured her, she hit 500 grams that day, but then fast forward, she was born on January 3rd and they were able to intubate her. She was 543, I don't know what the math is, but she was just over 500. So they intubated her, and they not only intubated her once, but it was twice because she was so feisty. She pulled out the tube and they had to re-intubate her in the OR.
We'll start at like...
I wasn't really awake
until... Around like midnight the night before.
Mm-hmm.
Things started to pick up. Jackie started having more contractions, and I just kind of had a feeling that it wasn't going to stop. Everyone else was kind of hopeful that it might, but it got to be around 4 a.m. We'd been up all night. We were both exhausted. Jackie, I don't know if you fell asleep or not. I remember sitting next to your hospital bed, putting my head on the bed like this, and I fell asleep for like an hour, just sitting up, you know, and then they woke me up and they said, okay, we're going to take her downstairs and we're going to deliver. And I was like, okay, this is really happening. Scared. I don't know what else. Like, it's like, it's funny the little things you pick up on when you're in a stressful situation or some sort of trial or life or death experience. But I remember they took Jackie, did the spinal, and remember being in there and just holding her hand and praying. And the first thing I remember was Lynlee, I didn't hear her cry, but I heard the surgeon take a big deep breath and sigh, like,
because he got her out.
Because I asked her later why she sighed, and she said, I was just so relieved that the baby was out and alive. And so that was the first memory I have. But they took her over in the corner. There's a whole team of people around her. And, you know, the next thing I know, they're coming over and they say, we got her intubated. So that's like, thank you, Lord. Like, that was the biggest, that was the biggest concern for us, was she big enough to be intubated? Would it even be possible to save her? And so, and they rolled her by in the little incubator, and you're just looking at this little girl.
I mean, you couldn't even see her.
It's like she's like fits in the palm of one hand. And
I remember wondering, like, does she have 10 fingers? Like, does she have 10 toes? Which now, after having more kids, is a normal thing. But really, like, are there muscle deformities there, like they said, or like, is she perfectly made? Like, but we couldn't tell at that point.
So anyway, but I just remember this overwhelming sense of just being scared and not really having anyone. And Jackie was there with me. I remember the CRNA anesthetist that was behind me must have been a believer, but he handed me a book, and on the inside was a Bible verse that he had written. And I don't remember what the verse was, but it was a sense of comfort, just knowing that, hey, I got a fellow believer here that, you know, he's in this with us, you know. And so anyway, they took Lynlee away, and Jackie, we went to the recovery room area.
We had to wait to go see her. It wasn't like when they throw the baby on your chest.
It wasn't. They had to go make sure she was alive, I guess. But
so I had to recover, and then I think she was born on a Monday. And did you go see her before me?
Yeah.
I know that, like, our parents got to see her. I couldn't go down there until that evening.
Well, the first thing was everyone in the waiting room was curious, what's happening. And so I went out the waiting room, and I don't remember exactly what I said. I think I said, she's alive, and I just lost it. And I gave my mom a hug, and I just sobbed on her shoulder. And I don't cry much, and I don't cry on my mom's shoulder a lot as a grown man. But in that moment, it was just a release of this stress and the
made
fear that okay, first step down, like she's here and Jackie's okay. And so it was a lot, but yeah, it's a good memory.